welcome into the session for Europe and happy Equinox. It's a fantastic opportunity we have to have you all from all over the world to discuss what it really means to be human and to focusing on the economy. Today, I'm your host. I'm Eliane Metni with Lena Anderson. I'm from Lebanon, and Lena is in Denmark, and Robert McTagg, who's in the US, right? So we're going to be facilitating the session. And if you have any question, don't hesitate to put it into the chat. But before we start, we've been all over the world. So we've done Oceania, we've done Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. And the discussion now in Europe is going to be, we're hoping that it's going to attract even more participants to join. So if somebody is late, this is recorded. Don't hesitate to continue and join the conversation. So in sequence, how this is going to run, the whole session, we're going to first get to know where everyone's from on the Padlet. Then we're going to get into a question. We're going to all think together about a common question before the speakers start. And then each speaker, so we've got 3 speakers. We've got that will focus on the economy, and we've got Lena from Denmark. We've got Ulrich from in the UK, and we've got Dr. Armin in Germany, you're all going to speak in sequence, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, and then we're going to go into breakout rooms where we're going to talk about those questions and what we'd like to ask the speakers. And then we come back for a discussion to debrief about the conversation. And then we look at again at the question that we've explored, that we will explore after the Padlet. Does it make sense to everyone? Okay, so let's get to the Padlet. Have you all placed yourself on the map?
So there's if you go to the chat, you see a link, and Robert, if you can, we got some people coming in now that haven't been here before. So you click on the Padlet link and you will see a world map. And as you can tell, we've already had people from around the globe who've done this all day. And as we conclude our 8 sessions here, we can show the world that we're gradually taking over. They will find us everywhere, and we will spread Bildung and informed conversations and change the world. So that's part of what it means to be human also. We'll just let everybody get a chance to place themselves on the global map. Let's go on to the next thing. So this is a sort of a tradition that we have in these meetings that we share with each other where we are, so we get a full picture of the global meeting on Equinox. So the other thing that we're gonna do, which is also a little tradition here, is that we're gonna ask a question for everybody, and when you answer that question, we would like you to write it down either on a piece of paper or anywhere but in the chat, because we would like everybody to do their own fresh thinking and not just look at what somebody else wrote in the chat and then have an opinion about that or write the same thing. So we'll give you 2 minutes with a question. And Robert, do we I'm asking you to both fix the world map and to share the slide. And I can't even see Robert.
I'm here. I can't share it.
Yes, good. Can you share the slide, please, with the question?
I cannot, because I don't have the
Oh, that's
share.
right. You need to be a co-host. I will make you a co-host. Now we just upgraded your competencies and power over the meeting. Please share the slide. So the question that we would like you to answer is, what is stopping us from cooperating better? And we give you, as I said, 2 minutes to answer that. And please write it down somewhere where nobody else can see it. And then we'll return in 2 minutes. All right, that was 2 minutes. So now we're curious about what your answer is, and if you write it in the chat and share it with us so we can see what everybody thinks is an obstacle to better cooperation. Robert will gather this and make a word cloud for us from this session, and we can see that at the end of the session. So please share what you think are the obstacles to better cooperation.
Thank you. I think we've got everyone's contribution. I'm going to just focus now on our next steps, which are the presentations, and then we will come back to the word cloud. We'll start with you, Lena, about speaking about in reference with what it means to be human. Lena, I think although everybody knows you, you're Lena Rachel Anderson, and you're an economist, author, and futurist. You brought us together in this event, but you're also a member of the Club of Rome, the initiator of the Global Bildung Network, and the author of The Nordic Secret. You also are the editor of What It Means to Be Human, and you've written ABCDFGH. Yes, the additional article. So the book, you have much to be proud of. Thank you so much for pushing so far for humanity and what makes us human. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Cool. This has been a really great day. I'm enjoying this so much. So and thank you for also joining the European session. I'll keep letting in people as they speak here. So I'm going to talk about the paper that we wrote, which is sort of a backbone through the whole event, and it's called ABCDEFGH. A for artificial intelligence, B for biotechnology, C for circularity, D for demographics, E for education, F for finance, G for global dispersion of knowledge, and H for humanism and humanity. And these 8 topics are things that we do need to take into account as we try to solve the complex problems that we're facing as a species. If somebody could share the link to the article in the chat, that'd be great. Not that you're supposed to read it while I speak, but at least you can have access to it afterwards. There are also 11 suggestions to how we can create different kinds of solutions to many of the problems that we have. And I wrote this paper together with Fullerin, who is also here. Fullerin, can you turn on your camera and maybe just wave to everybody so that people can see you? Because we've been discussing what are the things that we need to do differently. There is, thank you, Fullerin. So we wrote this paper together, and one of the 11 solutions that are in there is my idea for a polymodern economy, which is part of our maybe not finance exactly, but definitely money and how we structure the economy. And when economists look at the economy, there are 2 sort of things they talk about. They talk about microeconomics and macroeconomics. And macroeconomics is basically the household of the state. So it's nation state or national economy. And then microeconomics is households and companies. And they tend to forget that there are all kinds of different like associations and cooperations and different models for money exchange and exchange of value. And so the economic models that we have for the nation state with the microeconomics inside it is actually not looking at all the different kinds of economy that's going on, but that's just within the state. And these models were created when states had mainly physical goods that either were bought and sold inside the country or traveled across borders with customs papers and a lot of barriers for trade and So there was a difference between inside the country and outside the country. Then came the digital economy, and the nation states are completely open with regards to the transfer of digital code, which is a lot of the products that we're producing right now. So we have a global economy for which there aren't really any generally known economic models. We don't have a macro economic model that deals with global trade and that everybody learns at business school or when they study economy at the university. So we have tech giants that start in one place, and contrary to when people built factories and created cars and furniture, and that was where they made their money, there was a geographical gravity to where they would sell their things. There would be a distance from the factory that decided how far away they could export their things. With the digital economy, once you have a digital product, it is global from the moment you release it, particularly if it is in English. And when we pay for it, we pay with credit cards, and we got all this code that travels around the globe, which means that in the old economy, the physical goods economy, if you had a very successful company in a little country like Denmark, you could only become so rich. If you had a very successful company in a big country like the United States, you could become even more rich, but also just so rich. Now you can export to the entire globe and have it as one big market. And you can amass a lot of powers. You can become immensely rich, and you can start buying up startups and smaller companies, which means that we now have a global economy where when young people say, hey, I'm going to make a startup and I'm going to make a fortune, it's not because they're going to sell a lot of stuff. It's because they're going to create a company where somebody buys the company. So we have these tech giants that keep buying up smaller companies that have done all the research and development for free, and some of them fail and we never hear about them. Other of the startup people become billionaires. So this is completely new structure in the global market. And meanwhile, we're still human, and we need to be meaning making in a human way. And what does it mean to be human? And that's where one of the prisms, not prisons, but prisms through which I look at humanity is polymodernity. Which means several modernities or several time epochs. And the first one is 300,000 years of Stone Age. That's where we emerged as a species, and we spent life as hunter-gatherers at first, and then later agricultural Stone Age. Very small tribes, gift economy, money hadn't even been invented yet, and a very different societal structure. And there were a lot of very intricate rituals and cultural norms for how you exchange gifts and what kind of power relationships you have and who owes what to whom, and how do you balance the power structure, the alpha males and the alpha females and the beta males and the beta females, and what are the negotiations sort of non-verbally through exchange of favors in a small community like that. And we know that not just from humans, but also from gorillas and other big apes. So so we spent 300,000 years in the Stone Age, and our brains are made for that. Our brains are made for living in small tribes, meeting around the campfire, sharing meals together, and having these very intimate relationships, not in a sexual sense, but in a social sense. And then I'll just go with the Middle East and the European development here because I only have 10 minutes. We have the Bronze Age and the Iron Age in Egypt and Mesopotamia, which creates huge ring-walled cities with 5, 10, 50,000 people, 100,000 people, and some of them 300,000 people, 1 million people in Rome. And there you have a completely different societal structure, but you also have now artisans and different trades and different skill sets. And with that, lo and behold, the mythologies and animism of the hunter-gatherer Stone Age tribes becomes, it didn't just happen in one day, it took like millennia, but it eventually becomes polytheism. So there's one god for each really, really important thing in society, whether that is wine or writing or war or love or something else. And that is the artisan economy, and it's a market economy where you produce things, you take them to the market, get some money, and then you buy more stuff and take it home with you. Then somebody invented the printing press and the steam engine, and we get capitalism and colonialism. And now there's a whole new structure in the economy, which is first you have capital, then you produce something so you can get more capital by producing and selling stuff. And that's a completely different mechanism. And that is part of the modern world where we have new governance methods like democracy, we develop modern science, and we have equal rights and human rights and a completely different societal structure. And we have million-strong nation states of 10 million people, 20 million people, 350 million people in the United States, for instance. That's the modern world. And then we have the postmodern world, where it's digital, it's global, and where we can connect with each other globally, and where there is a digital economy that can, in theory, expand exponentially indefinitely, which means it can completely drown the real economy, the capitalist industrialized economy, which is typically traditionally nation-state economy, and the artisan traditional economy. And when I talk about a polymodern economy or polymodern economics, I try to imagine, what if we layered the economy so we have the gift economy, the indigenous economy under everything, and that's where we exchange favors and care about children and educate and cook meals and meet with our neighbors and share community gardens and things like that. And that's like a 5-minute walk from the kitchen. Then we have the local economy, which is the artisan economy, and that is the 15-minute city. That is where we have cooperatives, and that's where we can have money exchange, but we would also typically know who we're trading with because we see them over and over again, and so we can build relationships with them. And then there's the nation-state modern economy, which is the capitalist economy, because there are things that it just doesn't make sense to produce at artisan individual production of each individual item. So like bolts and screws and nails and furniture, steel, and all kinds of stuff, we do need capitalism. And then we do have the digital economy, and it's there to stay, and we need to regulate it, and we can't do that as nation states. It has to be at least at the continental level, but preferably at the global level. And if we could, and that's my hypothesis, my working hypothesis, and what I share in the article about a polymodern economy, is that if we could organize our taxing, our auditing, our local communities, our national economy, and our continental economies, deliberately looking at what takes place in which strata of the economy, and how can we, because in the caring economy, the gift economy, there's room for everybody. In the local artisan economy, it's very easy to integrate people who cannot compete in the global market. But once you get into the capitalist economy, we do need a different kind of skills and, I don't know, stamina, energy to just keep up the pace and keep a job in the industry sector. So we could create an economy that is multi-layered or poly-layered, and where there is a possibility for everybody to fit in, contribute with something, and maybe not earn a lot of money, but maybe have a lot of connections and get 3 meals per day and a nice place to stay and a place to show up. You'll not just include it because it's like there's something and then it includes somebody, but actually being part of something and contributing to something because they produce something of value that would actually work in that context. So it's a different way of looking at the economy, and I just introduced it about 6 months ago, and I hope that a lot of people will read about it and discuss it and come back to me with comments, and so that's what I'm hoping for today also.
Thank you so much for an insightful presentation. I just have one thing. At some point you were cutting, and I wonder if everybody heard, or it was only cutting on my end. So it's on my end. Okay. So it's a little bit everywhere. Okay. So the sound. So if you have any questions, then we will discuss them later. But at some point, Lyndon, your connection was dropping. at the end of
Okay.
sentences. Before we transition, I was just ask you to clarify. So those you see it as layers. So it's linear, one on top of the other, or
it's cumulative. So I mean, the indigenous gift economy was always there, and it's still there, and it's what the economist cannot include in the GDP, because there's no exchange of money, and the GDP only contains the money. But there's so much value created in this basic layer of any society and any economy. Then we get to the market economy, the artisan economy. And that's where economists are happy, because now we can measure the exchange and include the money in the GDP and see how healthy the economy is. But it doesn't say anything about what is actually created a value in the gift economy. And this model would not have money in the gift economy, but we could make surveys that measure something else.
There you dropped.
For instance, interactions.
Can you say
So
that again?
we could,
I think you dropped here.
So in the gift economy, we cannot have money that would ruin the relationships and the cooperation, but we could have surveys that measure the number of exchanges that people have, such as how many meals did you cook yesterday? How often did you speak to your neighbor yesterday? I mean, there are all kinds of exchanges that are part of the gift economy that we don't have any measurement for. And if we surveyed this and have like tons of privacy things and how to carry out a survey like that, I bet that we could, on even down to neighborhood level, see where people are thriving based on how many connections to other people they have over the course of a week.
Thank you for clarifying it. This is very enriching. Now we're going to go to our next speaker. We're going to go to the UK with Dr. Ulrich Loning. I hope I said your name correctly. He's a retired, Ulrich is a retired, he's retired from research in molecular biology, and he's now engaged in philosophy of science and human ecology. He will speak about how we can bring back the economy to have harmony with nature. Maybe I use back because I think we were at some point in harmony. How can we be at all in harmony with nature? Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Leni, for what you just said. It's a perfect introduction to what I want to say. That's great. What we've landed up with as a result of what you described, there are some noises now because musicians are moving in, so I hope you can manage. What we need to face up to is what I started a paper on that Leni has and that you should all have a look at. Civilization has reached a fundamental contradiction. We've made fantastic advances, not just in the economy. We've invented phenomenal tools. Science is one of the main ones. The invention of money and the financial system is another one, of course. Language itself, if you go back to the 300,000 years or more, that's when language got going, and the written language only about 5,000 or 10,000 years ago, so and so on. So we're landed up with a contradiction between the enormous successes that we're all enjoying, like on the zoo, and the endless fundamental problems that the world faces, of which climate change is just a symptom. The meeting that's going on here in London is on climate change, but all the participants recognize that it is just a symptom of how we live. So I tried to put my background experience in human ecology, the ecology of how and where and ultimately whether humans live on the planet. I tried to make a summary of where we are by comparing how we behave and what we do with how nature works. That's the fundamentals of the paper. And what it results in is actually a set of instructions of things that we need to do if we follow the assumption, it is an assumption, that if we behave like nature behaves, our problems will be solved. And the reason that we don't solve them is that we do not, as the Brundtland Commission analyzed in its first pages, we do not fit what we do with what nature does. So what are the differences and can we fit them? And I could list the differences, but everybody can invent their own. The purpose really is to say, let us expand the curiosity and the thinking. The purpose of the table of differences is not to show what the differences are. We can do that, but, and I will in a moment if you can put my slide on, but that's not the object. The object is to expand the thinking so that we will try and reach those sorts of conclusions. And what I put here is 9 factors by which natural processes on the left and industrial human activities on the right, how they compare. And there's a long text comparing each one of them and what it implies, which I don't want to go through, but I do want to stress that it's not a definitive table. For instance, the second line, that we think and work in a linear fashion in contrast to nature, which has networks and cycles. That's a general issue. But this meeting, for instance, is on the equinox. Most of us, most of the time, don't notice that it's the equinox because we have overcome the cycles of nature, lit up our cities at night. Night and day no longer matters. And the worst is we live in the 24/7 world. So you can go on looking at all of these like that. That second line, cycles and networks, could be expanded and include time and the cycles of time, our daily rhythms. It doesn't, but I'm just putting it in to illustrate how we can change. If you look through all of them, and I'm not going to do that now, and you can read the paper, which is online on ResearchGate, so anybody can get it. You can look at what each one of them really means. I should stress that nature never does anything, line 5, in large excess. We think nature is powerful, but it's not a patch on what humans have achieved. And we need only take the nuclear industry and the atomic bomb to show how much more than nature we could do. I hope we don't ever let it off. But you don't need to take that. You can take antibiotics, which for billions of years have been a natural force in the biosphere. And in 50 years of overuse, excesses, overuse, bacteria have become resistant. It's a ridiculous state of affairs. You can go on through all the other ones. The important one is the last, because what it all means is that we have overcome nature's feedback controls, and the economy that Lynn has just described is actually the most powerful force that has done that. It itself will not stand a feedback control. Economic growth feeds on itself to make more economic growth. It's positive feedback, not negative. We haven't learned that nature works by negative feedback. And that has enormous implications if we want to make an ecologically sound economy. And there's lots of people who've been trying to do that. And this meeting I'm at on climate change is one of those. So this is a way of thinking. And the result is really that we have to change the mindset of what we mean by progress. Really, progress is fitting in better And fitting in better means, for the longer term future, a lot of changes that people don't want to face up to. I think the biggest message, which I don't say in the paper, but I should, I'm saying it now, is that we don't want to change our way of life, but actually it's been a disaster. And we need to make a basic change. This is the reason for it. The note of optimism is that there is actually no material restraint to making the change. We can do all the things that I suggest in these 9 things. And if you can think of some others that are not here at all, please do and send them in and look at it. But the chances are that they will fit into one of those 9, like natural cycles do into number 2 that I mentioned. So it is a fluid list, but it's a list that makes you face up to the issues. And that is the note of optimism one can give, because we can actually, if we wish, do something about it all. We can all individually to a certain extent, but as Leni said, we're tied into a global system now, and that prevents us from doing the things I want to change. I think that's all I need to say like this. Somebody wants to expand on some of it, of course, can, but I don't think I need to say more now. So I look forward to some discussion.
Thank you so much. This has been very, very enriching, and I think there's gonna be so many questions. I just have a minor note, just to clarify. You mentioned a mind shift towards progress. Do you have a paper as well? Did you link it in the paper, or is it something to come in terms of what is the mind shift and how do mind shifts about progress happen? Is it in the paper, or is there another paper about it?
No, there's lots of papers in the literature. There's lots of books.
Yes.
Ted Goldsmith had the U-turn for society, and just now the man who started, the man who started the Oxford Real Farming Conference. Oh gosh, names go, and I know him so well. Never mind. The Great Rethink. But
Thank you so much.
There's a lot. The ways that agriculture can change. Agroecology is a way that answers almost everything we want to know, but it's prevented by the economic chains that we've globally put around the world, like the economic chain for our energy supply, which is the fossil fuel companies, support the imperialism of the big nations. As you can see, I'm a complete radical there. And similarly, half a dozen companies support the food chain, but actually the food chain should be your backyard or whatever bigger equivalent there is there. We cannot go on the present way we are. The quality of life will go up if we make a sensible mind change. There's lots of literature. And I quote a little bit of it in the paper. So you can look
Thank
it
you
up.
so much. Thank you. We'll get back to that mind shift in the discussion. All right. Thank you so much. Now we're going to go to Germany with Dr. Armin Schuster, and he will speak about cooperatives in Europe. Dr. Armin is specialized in coaching executives management in demanding change and transformation processes. The floor is yours.
Sorry. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here and being with following these the discussions we have heard in the past 20 minutes. I like to talk with you about cooperatives. And cooperatives in Europe is a tradition about 200 years back in history, a development which is something which have similar ties to Lena on the one hand and Ulrich's contributions on the other hand. And I would like to show it in the following. Probably we are not everybody is aware, but the cooperative idea is something within the World Heritage List since 2016, and the official statement of the UNESCO was, and I quote, "A cooperative is an association of volunteers that provides service of a social, cultural, or economic nature to members of the community to help improve living standards, overcome shared challenges, and promote positive change." And this is something which is, I would like to emphasize, it's very strong, something which Lena mentioned in her statement, as Ulrich mentioned it beforehand. The ties and the of the development of cooperatives are back to Germany in the at the end of the 19th century. There are two guys which were the founder of the new cooperative idea to bring something new in the economic world. One of them was called Schulte-Delitzsch, and the other one is called Hermann Schulte-Delitzsch, and the other one is called Wilhelm Raiffeisen. And Schulte-Delitzsch was more interested to develop or to support the economics to develop more what we called in Germany a Bürgertum, to bring them on. And Raiffeisen was more for the agricultural sector, had that in focus. The idea is to promote something like something for not stakeholder based, like we can know it in the typical economies, but member based is something which is more important than ever in our times, because it's something which is clearly have ties to the democratic forms of organization. You learn to work on democratic standards. You have the principle of self-help, self-responsibility, self-management, solidarity, and there's the hierarchies are fundamentally flatter, and the decision process, making process, is very important because there is a standard one man, one vote. That's clearly something which is in total opposition to the economic system of I have as much share as I have, and so I can control something. There is everybody have the same rights and the same obligations to do so. And what is interesting, because we are talking about the classical homo and the people which are there's a special type developed. It's called the Homo cooperatives, because there is not the understanding exclusively that the main focus is maximizing your own benefit, but the need for community and the ability of cooperation and to work with each other is more the main task to develop such a person and such things. And I would like to this was the development, as I mentioned before, starting in Germany. There was Lena and I discussed it beforehand. There was nearly at the same time in Denmark a similar development and movement. what's important so far, cooperatives are not specialized or have the only focus on economy, but in all parts of societal development, because the basic to be successful in economy is to have the educational background and the educational backbone to develop so. And if this is something, there are cooperative schools as well, universities, business schools. There is talking about the influence in Europe. There are strong movements of cooperatives in Germany as well as in Austria, in Switzerland, in France, Denmark, Nordic states. There are all kind of cooperatives movements, and there is a special cooperative movement I would like to put a little spotlight on it. It's Mondragon at Spain, because before they started as a very big multinational cooperative, very successful company, they started in 1943 as a school to make the basic, to develop the basics of educational and Bildung, Lene, to set the ground for development, to be economic successful and being successful in other parts. And so this is the one of the very strong points. Why are cooperatives are so successful, even though they are not liked in the typical economic lectures, because it's not the masterpiece of capitalism, because they are not stakeholder minded. And interesting, or probably something like fun fact, the finance crisis of 2006 following, there are a crisis of the financial system in the capitalism part of the world, and all on the when we look on the financial institutions, all types of banks had to take had to be supported by states, governments, or governor like the EU or something, or the HU. But there was one slightly part which didn't need support, and this was the cooperative banks or the cooperative financial sectors, because their system of their system to support each other, their system to develop things were so impressive that they didn't need money from other organizations. And if they are so resilient for crisis of like in financial sectors, but they are so resilient as well because for 200 years these all kind of cooperative movements and developments show their strength. It's something they have very. They should be a more impressive, or should be a stronger part in developing more things for the future generation, for the future societal development. And so I would like to invite all of you, if you're not into cooperative systems or cooperatives movements, to take a sharper look in it, because it's something which is important on the one hand, and on the other hand, you can participate on all levels, and can be something to develop furthermore for all of us. So
Thank you. This
Elaine?
was fascinating. It's very, very interesting. I have, before we transition to the group, I just had a very, very small question about the school. You mentioned the school was a cooperative, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's higher education, or is it a school K to 12?
The school I mentioned in Spain for as the part as the backbone of Mondragon, which was, first of all, it was a primary school, and then it developed furthermore as a higher educational business schools was growing.
And it's still a school? Okay,
It's
if you could share that link, I'm fascinated by the whole concept. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
I do so.
Okay, so I think now we're going to
Go
look
out
at,
into breakout rooms.
yes, go ahead.
Yes, we have 3 questions for you that we recommend that you talk about. One is, what did we just hear? What did we learn? And what would be a really good question to ask the speakers? And because Ulrich is going to leave us at 30 past the hour, I have given you 19 minutes in the breakout session. And I really hope that you're all going to join, because it's actually one of the really sparkling experiences of the global meeting on Equinox, and there are only cool, interesting people in the breakout rooms. I promise you that. So I'm gonna click open the breakout room. You just click on the room that you've been assigned to, and there will be interesting people waiting for you, and they're kind and friendly too. So have a good time, and we'll have time to discuss with Ulrich when you come back.
Wow, this has been so interesting. Thank you so much for those presentations. I'm excited to hear about what questions they will bring. And I'm excited about the concept of both, you know, a new economy, but that harmonization with nature and the possibility of cooperatives. Wow.
Yeah, I think there's basis for a joint article or something here, where we bring the harmony with nature and the polymodern economics and the 15-minute city, actually, because that's a thing, and a lot of people are very excited about it. And then the cooperatives. And I have discussed this with a couple of people in the Club of Rome, actually, because they're also economists. And when they studied economy, they didn't hear about the cooperatives either. And we all agreed, it was like, we know from elsewhere that cooperatives played a huge role in Europe. And we had the beginning of the welfare system, actually, was one person walking with this little box from door to door and collecting money. And it was like the health savings. And so whenever somebody got sick, they had piled money so that they could pay for the doctor. And that's part of European history that we never tell each other. But it was there, and it was the small rural communities where they figured out, hey, I can't necessarily afford to pay the doctor, but if we all chip in, whoever gets sick first will get help. Maybe it's me. So that's how I mean, that's the foundation under the Nordic welfare state and the German and the rest of Europe.
That's one of the main topics. The cooperatives, they made an advertisement 10-15 years ago, with the title "The most biggest and unknown financial system of the world," and that's for sure, because everybody's thinking about, not on the if you leave the financial system, and as you mentioned before, the health system, in all parts of society, there are cooperatives. They have central
They have central?
rules. Well,
I'm curious to see how that could work in education, because I think, especially in times of crisis, people have gathered, but they didn't have a structure to support learning in aftermath of crisis, of refugees, of so many cases. So I think here we can have a model that can be in crisis, but also to change the way schools are money making.
I think comment
sorry,
on that.
Sorry?
Can you hear? I don't know.
Yes.
I want to put a comment in there. One of the lines in my table is that the difference between us and nature is that we do not cooperate either with each other or with nature. And whereas fundamentally nature is the biosphere is a cooperative organization, and our view of it is distorted by Darwin. He was quite right in selection of the fittest. He didn't use that phrase ever himself. Actually, every organism in nature depends on all the others for its food and its home. And they're all therefore interdependent. And it was Alexander von Humboldt who really gave that notion a tremendous input. And he was lucky because we didn't know much biology in those days. So now we're distorted by knowledge. And so we measure everything in that sort of way. But the cooperative movement is really a fundamental biological phenomenon to our advantage. And if we followed it fully and properly, there would be peace in the world. We wouldn't have wars. We would share out the assets that we have. We would all be happier and better off. I can't see how anybody can fight for themselves. And I blame Darwin partly because of this notion of survival of the fittest, which he never used. He did point out that those who are not fit to fit in with their society that they live in will die. That applies to us too. But we're now doing that all to each other. So we'll all
It's as if we don't kill them.
Yeah. So I think that the cooperative movement has a very powerful scientific backing.
right.
Right.
So
Darwin didn't create social Darwinism.
No.
No, oh. I mean, it's interesting that there is this whole, I mean, it was sometimes referred to as the third sector in the economy, where it's like, yeah, we know that they're cooperatives, but you don't have to learn about them. We need to talk about the stock exchange and the private, the microeconomics, the private consumer part of the economy, and then there's the corporate business worlds, and that's it. And from time to time, it's like there's the limited liability one-man company, and there's like the tiny little stuff. But other than that, all the economic theory was about public companies.
And of getting the better of each other.
Yeah.
and the so-called third organization is something which have in several sectors a very large market share.
Right. And what is really interesting is that I mean, one of the things that I suggest in the polymodern economics is that what we should measure is the fine meshedness of the network of exchanges, so that how many exchanges and how fractal is the system of exchanges in the economy. So is there a rich exchange of in the gift economy? Is there a rich exchange in the local economy? Is there a rich exchange in the national economy with connections into both the local and the home economy? And then there's the digital continental global economy. And how well are they connected? And can we measure the number of connections and have that as a proxy for complexity, and how complex and rich and balanced is that economy? It will be a completely different way of measuring the health of an economy rather than measuring the GDP, which is
I
basically
think
nonsense.
very deep insight. Didn't the Scandinavian countries, in fact, have an arrangement of that sort between them? I remember hearing about the relationship between the steel industry and Norway, steel in Denmark and, no, Sweden and Norway, steel being made in Sweden. And I can't remember now exactly what the details was, but the outcome is that the Norwegians wanted to exchange fish for volvos, and they are very unequal. They are not an exchange. And so, that was squashed as a result of that movement. I don't know anything about it, except I heard about it, I think in the 1980s, when the other economic summit started in London, the alternative economics to the global economic summit that takes place every year. I may not know, but you will know more about that.
So this is not something I have heard about. I know that, I mean, we've had actually had a monetary union in Denmark, Norway, and Sweden in 1870. We had the same currency.
Here for the concert tonight.
Yeah, there's music in the background.
Yes. Switch off when I'm not talking, so you go on.
But what we do have in the Nordics is the three-party model and the negotiations of wages and the workers' right, and the collaboration between workers and employers and the government. And we do not have an official minimum wage in the Scandinavian countries because it's negotiated without any legislation. So, and even with that, we have a very high minimum payment. I could legally, I think, hire somebody for €1 per hour if they agreed to it. I would be very unpopular with a lot of people, but it wouldn't be illegal. And somebody from the union would call me and tell me all kinds of nasty stuff, but I don't think they could actually do anything, particularly if I didn't have an agreement with the employers association. So there's actually a very, I mean, this rumor that we're socialists in the Nordic is like, no. We've just distributed the organization of stuff and people take care of it locally. And we don't need the government for a lot of things, but we also don't have everything taken care of by the market. Now we do, but we used to do it differently. So there is part of the Nordic model is really that we've engaged locally and self-organized, which I think is a message of hope, because it means that once you know the ways that you can organize, you can just get started. And that's one of the things that we're working with here in Nordic Bildung, is trying to say, how can we create structures that have easy onboarding for people in economies where this doesn't exist already? Can we package this so that it's easier to join and become a co-owner, self-organizer, than to stay out of it? Because then we would actually sort of get into harmony with nature, because human nature would be like, hey, I want to cooperate. I want to make more money. I want to improve our local economy. I want to create more wealth where I am. I want to connect with more people. And so we need to create frameworks where this kind of behavior is, that would be a different kind of positive feedback loop, but there could also be some negative feedback loops that would sort of push people towards collaboration instead of competition.
And it will strengthen the local framework.
Yeah, exactly. And you would have, one of the benefits would be that you would boost the economy, but you would also boost the responsibility, the trust. You would have lower corruption because people would know each other, and it's like, no, I don't want to participate in that. And you would have people taking care of each other, because you wouldn't have this sense of everybody else competing with you, and you would, I mean, the human thing is to care. The money system is to not care. And if we could change the economy and the structures of the motivational structures in the economy, we could actually have a very different kind of economy. So yeah.
Sounds like a plan for me.
Yeah, let's get started. I mean, now it's a Saturday evening here, but on Monday we'll
Okay, Tuesday.
okay, well, oh yeah. Actually, I need to take my other computer to the repair shop on Monday. So yes, Tuesday would be good. So we got another 3 minutes.
Good.
And then they'll come back with a lot of questions. So Armin, what was your reaction when you saw Ulrich's model there?
It was very impressive. It's it comes very easy. It comes very it's if you hear it for the first time, it's absolutely clear and absolutely self-esteemed, because why do we do it in another way? We have to do it in the in balance with nature. I get it all. I get it completely.
Yeah. I mean, it's so simple, and it's like, why haven't we seen this before? I think it's brilliant.
Absolutely.
Damn, I didn't come up with that. No, it's amazing that this isn't something that somebody came up with 50 years ago. It's so, to me, obvious once you see it. So Ulrich, you're brilliant.
I was told a wonderful quotation from Kurt Vonnegut a few days ago. He was being interviewed or interviewing a millionaire in New York, and they talked about money exactly like you have been. And suddenly Kurt said, "You know," to this rich man, "I've got something you will never have. Enough." How do we do that?
Exactly.
And that's the point for cooperatives.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's not the more and more and more for me, myself, and I, because it's for all of us. Enough for all of us.
And when you have enough, you can spend your time not on the cooperative, but on playing music or seeing your family or doing all the other parts of life that make it living meaningful. So the cooperative, because you do need to be engaged in it for it to work. Once you have enough, it's like, yeah, no, I don't need to spend more time on this. I'll go out and do something else that I find fun and meaningful.
And it's probably for the society as well, or for the for the well-being, or for the
Yep.
community. Well,
yeah, so now we have 40 seconds until the others come back. We've solved everything, and let's see what they've come up with.
I'm curious.
And they're not returning yet, so they must be having a good time. Welcome back.
Great. So I think it would be good if you all put your questions in the chat so we can handle them in sequence. And maybe we can start with the questions for Ulrich, because he has to leave at the half hour, right? But you're also welcome to raise your hands and ask your question. Okay, so we already have one here for Ulrich. Operationally, what sort of activity does your model call for? We can't hear you, Ulrich. You need to unmute yourself. So there are two questions for you.
Activities.
There,
That
you have
obviously,
two questions.
because that, if that's what you want me to answer, because that bridges that gap between academic thinking, which this is, and practicality, which I also do. I'm very practical. So what does it call for? For instance, to growing your own food, being satisfied with your lot, improving your lot by cooperation, and a number of things are actually put in the discussion. It means that you have to follow actually what Pope Francis said, hallow the biosphere. The biosphere can be your religion. It provides your food, give us our daily bread, it does that. Forgive us for our trespasses to the limits of the planet, it does that, and so on. So you can really see that a lot of our lifestyle is geared to not doing the good things that we've been talking about at this meeting. And it's not difficult at all to think about doing the good things. And if we all did that, we'd be most of the way there. There is a prediction by Chris Smage, for instance, that the world, not just the country, the world will slowly develop towards local, small-scale farming. He says it's something he'd like to promote. Most of us agricultural thinkers would like to promote that. But Chris Smage, as a sociologist, not a farmer, says it inevitably will happen because the pressures on the world with approach to limits to growth, the pressures on the world are increasing, and we will turn to the next economic opening, which is local, small-scale farming. That'll do more to improve our diet, our health, the international community, all the things that Leni's been talking about. I think a lot depends on that one so-called one issue. It also, as we've discussed at this climate meeting, does a completely different thing of benefit. It allows the soil to grow. When we talk about economic growth, Leni, you brought up economic growth, I don't think the way we have the economy now can go on growing. The new Labour Party in Britain is again like the Conservatives before them. There's no difference. They both talk about the solution to their problems being economic growth. No, that'll exacerbate the problems, and is. But the soil can grow forever and go on growing. It'll absorb carbon, increase biodiversity, improve food supply, make the food healthier, so it'll improve the health service. The synergistic benefits of us all doing small things correctly is enormous. So I won't say more than that.
Okay, there are additional questions to you, Ulrich. One of them is about stability and nature. Like, how is it possible to consider nature as creating global stability if stability is almost non-existing in nature? So that's one. And then linking the previous concept with finance is how do you actually pay for all these actions without falling in bankruptcy? And so
I'm not sure whether I've understood you fully. The musicians here have just left, so that means I have to leave in a minute too. So at least it's silent here, which is good. But that word stability gives me the creeps, if you know that expression. I feel very uneasy things are not stable. Things move. They're always in flux. Stability is not what you want. Resilience and sustainability go together, and they are what you want. So, if you have very big scale farming, if I stick to that one example, I think I have to write a separate paper on farming. If you have big scale farming, the food chain dominated by a few people, it's actually brittle. It's the words of, who was it, that American economist? Brittle is the right word. It looks stable, but a little crash and it'll collapse. A little something wrong, it'll collapse. It can be broken. And we've seen that, the way COVID upset the whole economy. It's ridiculous. It didn't need to happen that way. So I think there are very practical outcomes there which started this. And stability is not something we should go for. Resilience is. That means diversity and flux. They're different concepts.
If
Thank
I
you
may,
so much for explaining this.
I would
ahead.
actually like to answer the question in even more concrete terms, because I think there are two very concrete things that we can do. One is that we can teach this in economics and in the business schools, because we were all taught the linear non-natural model. We could be taught the natural model, and we could actually teach biology in business school.
That'd be lovely, yes.
Yes,
Sorry
so
to-
that's one thing. The other thing,
teaching for 40 years. We don't want it. People don't want it. Only the converted want it. Sorry to go on. Yeah.
and the other thing is, we can tax different things. And we can have progressive taxes. We can have tax on distance. We can have tax on not necessarily import, but transportation. So we can build in different kinds of feedback mechanisms in the economy. I mean, we already have taxes. It's a feedback system.
Yeah.
And so we can just have different taxes.
Why don't we tax the fossil fuel provision at source? Very easy, because there's very few of them. So it's very easy to tax them and distribute that money to the population. The price of energy will go up because of the tax, and the poor population will benefit from the distribution and can afford it. And in that way, you phase out the fossil fuel industry. So it was proposed 50 years ago as a unit tax, was the name it was given. And it's a very good idea, but squashed. Squashed because, of course, it'll squash the fossil fuel industry, and they don't like it. Okay, I think I must go.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you
joining us.
so much.
Can I do anything else just before going? Where are we?
Thank you. This has been so great, Ulrich. I'm so happy that you could join us and share your article and your insights. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's been a wonderful meeting, and I look forward to the recording, and we can go on by email and take every issue further. And I'd like to meet Armin sometime. I'll do that on email. Okay, so bye-bye.
Looking forward as well. Bye.
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 Okay, as we continue, there's a question for you, Armin. It's about, are you considering cluster economics as the next level of development of cooperatives movement?
Am I allowed to ask back? Because what is the definition of
You
cluster
are.
economics?
Please do. Let's just make sure that the person is.
That's my question, Armin. Hi.
Okay.
The
Hi.
cluster economics is economic created and consisting of industry clusters, which is
I see.
the major as a direction accepted even by EU, for example. We have some national economics almost in 100% consisting of such say collaborations of competitors,
I see.
as Sweden, for example. And very close to this is Denmark. At 89%, it is UK. And the theory behind is Michael Porter's. So it is cooperatives in a way created by organizations. That's why my question is, it could be considered in your view as a next level of cooperation between organizations. Some of them could be and are cooperatives, but which is aiming at higher level of interaction between people and organization, a collaboration, something
Yeah.
where every member pursuing the development of resources of each other. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your kind definition. It could be a solution for all type of problems and situation that you mentioned before. It could be a solution as well. It could be it's something from the point of view of organizational structure. Cooperative has many offer many solutions for this so far. It is nevertheless something which we have to learn, on the other hand, because as Lena, we discussed it beforehand, in the on the lectures of economies, in the economic lectures, there's no part for cooperatives and these so-called third organizations. It's something which you have to, if you, it's nothing nothing which is common, or it's something like a suspicious animal in the zoo. And if we have to learn to work with it, and we have to learn to work on ground of the movement so far. Did you answer your question so far?
Okay,
kind of. It's a starting point.
Mm-hmm.
If
Thank
I
you.
may add to the cluster thing, I don't know to what extent you can plan a cluster. We have an energy cluster in part of Denmark where
Different. No, I'm not talking about this kind of natural resources. Look at, say, Luxembourg cluster of creative industries, which
Right.
could consist even from human being.
Right. So I mean, clusters emerge because there is this healthy friction and competition locally, because you compete with your neighbors in a different way than you compete with somebody on the other side of the globe. And there is usually some kind of initiating factor that does that a cluster emerges in a country, and it doesn't have to be natural resources. For instance, Belgium is huge in chocolate. There's not a single chocolate palm in Belgium. So there was some other factor that led to a lot of competitors in the chocolate industry in Belgium, and they just kept improving and improving and improving their chocolate production. So I think this happens where you have any kind of high skill development in creativity and production. It can be in design, it can be in music. We've also had the second largest city in Denmark was huge in music in the 1980s. Now nobody really hears about them anymore. But so these come and go, and they're very often depending on some initiating factor. I actually wrote a report about the Danish mink industry 30 years ago or more. And the reason why we had the huge mink industry was because of the fishing industry that had so many byproducts that ended up as mink fodder. So yeah, I mean, clusters would, I think, that is what creates local business environments, and you have people who get inspired by each other and see a niche and where they can go in and do something that they wouldn't be able to do in other places, because they also have suppliers and they have education for it. So yes, clusters would definitely be a part of it. And we could, one of the things I imagine with the polymodern economy is that you would actually have neighborhood clusters of different kinds of art and culture and design and food and production. And you could, with a polymodern economy and strong neighborhood artisanship, you could actually become a tourist 20 minutes from your part of town, because there would be a neighborhood in your town that had something that is so interesting and different that it would be worth spending a weekend there. So instead of flying to New York for a shopping weekend, you could get in, maybe just on your bicycle and go to another part of a bigger city, or drive for 20 minutes and be in another place. We see traces of this already. There are neighborhoods in the bigger cities that have a different profile, but this could be even stronger. So I would say that's part of it.
Thank you, Lene. I meant exactly this.
We understand each other.
Yep.
So, Lene, you've got two questions. One about taxation, and if you agree with Piketty, Thomas Piketty's concept of taxation regulation that needs to be for the digital economy. Should it be regulated? And the next one is about are there about possible examples of even if there are fragmented experiences where there have been collective agreements that are what are they, if they're needed for the poly economy to occur? What might the conditions be, political, economical, social, in order to operate the poly economy?
Right. So the taxation first, thing that I proposed a long time ago, and I have no idea how to do this in the real world, but that would be taxing market share. So if you're a startup and have like a 0.2% of the market, you're not taxed. But once you have 30% of the market in a certain field, you may be taxed, I don't know, 40 to 60%, which means that you would actually keep the competition going in that field in the market. I have no idea what kind of administration that would go into this, but economists we come up with all these perfect scenarios to create models so that we can discuss what might be a practical solution. So a market share taxation would prevent monopolies and keep the competition going. With regards to, are there examples? We already have a polymodern economy, because there is home-cooked meals in every economy. There are artisans in all modern economies. There are factories in capitalism in all modern economies, and we do have a digital economy everywhere. But we have not created a model and a measurement and a taxation and a political system that works with it and makes it even more clear-cut when we're doing it and promoting it, so that we could get the best out of all four economic models. And there could be different employment agreements, there could be different taxation, there could be different access to natural resources, water, for instance, electricity. There could be a different price on internet data. All kinds of feedback loops that you could create in a different way if you wanted to promote local activity and local interconnectedness, and having what I call a fine meshedness of the economy locally, so that there are a lot of it's a very tight network of interactions. And we could measure that. If we measured transactions and how frequent they are and how many different people we have transactions with, we would have a completely different measurement of a healthy economy than by just measuring how much money is changing hands.
So I'm looking in the chat if there are more questions that we've missed. So there's one, what are avenues for actions towards a new economy aside from legislation? Has this been answered? No.
I would say we need to write some articles and make some more videos and talk about this and write some opinion pieces in newspapers and elsewhere, email journalists, and when they keep bringing up the traditional answers from the government to the economic problems that we're in, then write them and say, hey, you know what? There's some different ways of looking at this. There's this wonderful gentleman, Ulrich Lönning, who wants to change the economy so it becomes in harmony with nature. And there are other things you could look into instead of just taxing the same stuff that we've been taxing for the past 150 years. I would like to say one more thing about taxing, because until the steam engine, what we taxed, or what the kings taxed, was land and property. And then they demanded horses and men for their armies. And maybe you had to pay 10% of your crops. But it wasn't until somebody invented the steam engine and a labor force that we had personal taxation of our personal income on labor. So we changed the tax system when we had a new technology. Now we have a lot of new technologies, so we need to change the taxation again. And invent new kinds of taxation. I mean, that's what we did when we suddenly had a lot of not so much the workers, but definitely the middle management layer and an emerging middle class was like, ooh, we can tax them individually on their wages. That made no sense 50 years earlier.
So there's a comment, not a question. So I had quite some revelation about labor work in reading Hannah Arendt this summer, and this could be of relevance here.
Absolutely. So I forgot which one is labor and which one is work, but I mean there's the stuff that you do because somebody pays you and then you stop when the money stops. And then there's the stuff that's meaningful and where you create value. Right, Jeannie?
Yeah, so the labor is the stuff that gets consumed and disappears, that used to be done by slaves before the Industrial Revolution and serfs and the like. So the slaves did it, the labor, so that the masters could take part in action in the political arena. And there was no point in taxing, you can't tax slaves because they weren't technically humans in the ancient Greek. So she goes back to ancient Greece with all of that. Work is the stuff you do to build the human world, like write books, build cathedrals, etc. And what she says is that in the Industrial Revolution, a lot of what we used to consider as work actually became labor, and a lot of things that didn't used to be disposable became disposable. And so then it became easier to just tax the labor, because everything became labor. And the private sphere took over the public sphere. So that's from The Human Condition from Hannah Arendt, for those who don't know what we're referring to.
Yes. Cool. I think we're running out of time here.
Yep. And I think we did all the questions.
So
There's one about visualizations for such personal assessments for the models.
yeah, but we do need to stop because we do need to start again in Latin America in exactly 18 minutes.
Okay.
So Robert is sharing our word cloud. So why is it so hard for us to collaborate, to cooperate? And selfishness keeps coming up.
Oh, it's fantastic to have those clouds.
And we are, of course, going to make one that brings all 8 sessions together. So there will be the big global meeting on Equinox word cloud about why it's so hard to cooperate. If you want to join more action, we start again in 17 minutes. But there's also the Global Bildung Network for those of you who haven't signed up already. Robert, if you could share that in the chat. We also have the article, the ABCDEFGH, that we have been referring to over the course of the day. And then we have the Padlet, where we strongly encourage you to click on the Padlet link, go to the world map, and mark where you are so that we create this map of where everybody has participated from. And then, of course, after you participate in the next 2 sessions, you can also get the book What It Means to Be Human, which started the whole thing about this, what it means to be human. And that's the last commercial break for now. I think we're good. So, Ilian, thank you so much for hosting this. Thank you, Armin, for contributing. Thank you, Ulrich, even though you left, for thank you for contributing with a brilliant model, and Armin for sharing some of our European heritage that we never talk about. And thank you, everybody, for participating, joining the conversation, and Robert for doing all kinds of practical internet stuff. So see you in 16 minutes, same channel. I will shut down the Zoom room in the break, because that's how we stop the recording and can start on a fresh recording in 15
Thank you.
minutes. So
Bye-bye.
thank you, Leon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.